Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cozy Content Corner. Today, we have my friend Casey Jourdan, and y'all, I'm so excited to dig into everything with Casey, including the new app Threads. But let's do a little intro before we dig into all the goodies. So Casey is a growth coach who helps neurodivergent folks show up unapologetically and authentically. With a master's in mental health and personal experience with ADHD, autism, and a traumatic brain injury, Casey knows the importance of being intentional. Her mission is to help neurodivergent individuals heal their past, reframe their present, and find their new path forward. Casey, welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm so glad you're here. Casey messaged me like right before my wedding, and I was like, yes, we need to have a chit chat on the pod. And then she so graciously offered to, if you guys hear scratching or little cries, that's the foster puppy. She graciously offered to listen to my episode about why I left the field of speech therapy. And I was really nervous that I was just like not using the right verbiage, and like she was the perfect person to like get their ears on that. So thank you again for doing that.
Absolutely.
This episode will be linked there for anybody to come over and like hear more about you. I want us to like back up before we started the biz and tell me, like, what were you doing in your past careers? Like, what were your past careers? Dig into that with us.
Well, I'm going to start with that with the caveat that I'm ADHD. So there's been a few career changes along the way.
Yes, I love it.
But because it's relevant, I'm going to touch back to like high school. We won't go over everything since then, but I joined the military when I was 17. And it was like 2 months before the 9/11 terrorist attack. So like I joined a peacetime military. Females had never been put in combat. That all abruptly changed. So I did 6 years military police. I spent a year in Iraq and was actually wounded towards the end of my tour, which is where I sustained the traumatic brain injury. So we can get into this later, but there's a very interesting pre-injury, post-injury moment in like my neurodivergence, like how my brain worked. Like there's this shifting moment. So I always think that's really interesting. Since then, there has been a variety of not working, going to be a fitness and health coach. I spent about a decade working in CrossFit and nutrition coaching. I loved that. I got my master's in rehabilitation and mental health counseling, was going to be a therapist, work for the VA, work with other veterans, all that good stuff, and realized that I was still dealing with my own trauma. Like, this is why I wanted to listen to our speech pathology episode, is like a really similar story in a way that like I'd gotten this master's degree. I was dedicated to this field. I love these people in this work, but I was still dealing with enough of my own trauma that like trying to be a therapist for other people dealing with very similar trauma was a bit more than I could handle. So I moved into a different part of mental health to see if I could still like use my degree. And then my husband and I, we got married. We'd been married all of like 4 days. We're on our honeymoon. We're sitting in a bar in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And he goes, okay, like we finally did it. We're married. What do you want to do with like the rest of your life? And I was like, honestly, I want to quit my job and be an entrepreneur. Like I waited till the poor sucker had signed the paperwork and was stuck with me.
Yes.
And he said, okay. He said, let's figure it out. And part of it was he was seeing the toll that working in mental health was taking on my mental health. And so we literally there in the bar started talking through logistics of when I could quit my job, what I would do in the meantime. And we made it happen. I left my job and started doing full-time fitness coaching, running my own fitness coaching business and coaching CrossFit for another gym. I did that for a few years. And then I didn't work for a couple of years. We went through a huge battle with infertility and did a lot of IVF and multiple miscarriages. And I just couldn't really function through a lot of that. And so I took a few years off and kind of just was a pincushion for hormones and housewife, and then spent a couple years working as a business strategist because I love the logistical early setup stages. I fucking love like that adrenaline dopamine that comes from being a new entrepreneur. And my husband told me I couldn't start any more businesses, so I started a business helping other people start businesses. Loophole. And
Yes,
that
that is
has
a good
like
loophole.
yeah, and I loved that work, but it's so analytical that it wasn't feeding my soul, and I still miss the mental health work. That's still at the root. My passion is helping people live a better life, and so that kind of evolved. And over those last couple of years, I went through another major medical thing. I have a couple steel bars in my rib cage and couldn't work for about 6 months, and so the business strategy business kind of shut itself down during that recovery. And I was like, why am I waiting to do the thing I am passionate about? And so I shifted into this neurodivergent coaching and just have hit my stride with it, and am in love right now with working with other largely ADHD and autistic folks, but a wide variety of mental health and developmental disabilities. And like, how do we fix our shit? How do we make sense of what's going on in our brain? How do we make life work better? How do we get out of the burnout cycle? And that's what I do now, and a lot of content creation.
Yes, yes. And we're going to dig into that too. And I want to dig even more into what this current business looks like. But I want you to tell us with your TBI, as much as you're comfortable.
Yeah.
For people that don't really know what a TBI is, if you can explain that, and then tell us about the shift that happened for you once you had your TBI.
Yeah. So what we didn't know, this was almost 20 years ago now when I got wounded in 2004. We didn't realize I didn't lose consciousness when I got hurt. And we didn't realize that just being exposed to a giant bomb could actually cause damage to the brain. It causes your brain to rattle around inside your skull and can cause some damage. And so I actually wasn't even screened for a concussion. When we got back to base and everything was okay, like they checked my ears, made sure I didn't rupture an eardrum. I also have joint and nerve damage all through my left shoulder, elbow, and wrist. They checked my nerves. They checked for broken bones. And it took about 5 years to find out I actually had a TBI, because it was a non-subject in the VA back then. And so they just wrote it off as PTSD. I was doing the trauma therapy. Things were getting better, but there was still this like little things that didn't quite make sense with PTSD, some memory issues and some like how my emotions would swing, and just kind of get pushed off to the side. And then coincidentally, my mom was working with the Department of Defense on something and had to read a bunch of research about brain injuries. And she was like, well, shit, that's the missing piece. And so 5 years later, I went back to the VA. I got a full neuropsych evaluation, which is a 6-hour long battery of tests. It's a huge process. And so we could actually see like what part of my brain was damaged. And all of a sudden, all this other stuff made sense. So at this point, I had flunked out of college twice. I had been in, like, this is one of the big shifts. I had been an A-B student in high school without trying. Like, I missed about a third of my senior year and still pulled mostly A's. And then I flunked out of college twice. And it was like, I just thought I was too stupid for college. And I just internalized it as me being bad. And then we got this brain injury component, and we found out that I have a bunch of executive dysfunction issues. One of the big issues that was really enlightening is I have visual spatial damage. And so when you're looking at words on paper, normal brains can like take all those letters and it forms it into a word, and it can process what that word means. My brain can't do that very well. And so like, depending on the font, the line spacing, how white the paper is, my brain can't process what I'm reading. And so I flunked out of college because all of a sudden I went from having a near photographic memory to having like no short-term memory at all, which didn't realize was happening. And then this reading thing, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, like I remember reading a book and I was like, I know I have the sensation that I like the book, but I cannot for the life of me remember what it is about, which is so
Mhm.
weird for me because all through high school, like I'd read a book once and or watch a movie once and I would annoy the crap out of people because I could recite half of it back to you. And all of a sudden now to this day, like I can watch a movie 3 or 4 times before I can remember how it's going to end. And so then there was this like realizing the biggest things being the memory gaps and having to learn to read again were really the big markers, and really tackling that allowed me to kind of pick back up and get back into college and finish my bachelor's and go on for my master's.
Yeah. Now, this is so interesting to me because this like falls into like a bunch of my speechy things.
Yep.
But like again, some people might not know like what executive functioning is. So like how do you see like those difficulties that you have with executive functioning impacting like your life and your business?
So executive functioning, like I like to kind of you think of like the executive, the guy who's running everything and keeping track of all of the details. Mine is sleeping on the job. And so like things like organizing, remembering step by step, depending on how I'm doing, because this all fluctuates with like how tired I am, how stressed I am, things like that. When I'm having a bad brain day and say I need to post a TikTok, which means I need to record it, edit it, put captions on it, and upload it and write a caption. 5 steps. Cannot wrap my brain around that concept. And I will spend hours just staring at my phone, or I will literally write a sticky note with those 5 steps on it so I can baby step myself through these 5 steps. So a lot of it is this like, I have multiple different ways to run every aspect of my business. Like I have 3 different calendar and to-do list systems that I have to kind of shift between depending on what season I'm in with like how busy I am and how my brain's doing. And like just kind of not letting things fall through the cracks. And so a lot of like figuring out systems of alarms and reminders and calendars. And like I said, I have 3 calendars running right now so that I would make sure to show up on time for this. And so a lot of those like just how to human tasks take extra awareness and intention more than I think people realize.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. How to human tasks, 100%. And like, I think that's going to resonate with so many people listening because I have a lot of people with chronic illnesses in my audience, a lot of neurodivergent folks, and you don't think about how many steps it takes to do seemingly simple tasks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so thank you for sharing that and just like normalizing that, like, hey, it's a thing. And sometimes I have to set 5 reminders in order to like show up for a podcast.
Totally. And some days it comes down to prioritizing what's most important. So, like, I have a client call and we're recording this podcast. Like, those have to happen. I do everything I can to not rebook client calls because usually I can get my shit together for an hour. But because, like, I also have chronic pain problems too and some fatigue problems. Like, I get the chronic illness side of it too. And so, like, there's this constant prioritization and, like, not shaming myself that, for example, like today, those might be the only 2 things I do. And the rest of the day I lay in bed. Like I get out of bed, I put on a presentable t-shirt. Since it's Zoom, I put on a clean shirt. I get on, I do the call, I put my jammies back on, I go lay down until my next call. Like letting go of the shame that some days that's how I have to run my business has been huge in being able to stick to running businesses.
Yes. Yes. Now, how about like the autism side of things? Like, how have you seen that impact your business and maybe content creation? Because I mean, autism presents differently in everyone. So I'm so curious to hear, like how it impacts you.
Yeah. So I fall autism being a spectrum, not of more or less, but a spectrum of we struggle with different areas. I have very low support needs when it comes to social things. That's never been a hard area for me. Partly where I do struggle is I'm just oblivious to social cues, so I don't give a shit, which sometimes plays to my favor. I tend to think outside of the box because I don't feel obligated to follow the rules and like social norms, and I can see things from so many different angles that like I think my autism is what makes me such an amazing coach, to like brag on myself for a second, but I could see things from so many different angles that I'm like, okay, let's try this. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, let's talk about this angle. That didn't work. And like there's kind of an infinite way that my brain will process options. And then when it comes to like social media, it's tiring. Like I realized I used to think I was an introvert and really shy, but I realized that was me masking the autism and like not wanting to get society wrong. I think actually I'm just a autistic extrovert. And so I want to be the center of attention. I love being the life of the party. And it is so much sensory input that it is exhausting. So I walk in the door, it's game on, it's go time. Like I'm big, I'm loud, I'm bold. We have a great time. And then I go home and I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Crash. And so I kind of have brought that to my content creation as well, of like, well, and you talk about this in your content of kind of batching when you feel good, so you have stuff for the harder days. Like I do the same. If I'm on a go day, man, I'm just like crank out as many videos as I can and dump them into my drafts, and they're there because I always have the energy to edit. And so I get the stuff recorded and then I'll wait and edit it on the day that I don't have the energy to record. But yeah, that's, I think the biggest ways the autism kind of shows up for me, and figuring out that nuance of actually being extroverted helped makes more sense for me in how I want to show up, especially at like local, like in-person events, and kind of how I manage showing up for those and then recovering after those.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, masking, can you just like explain a little bit what that is when you say like I'm masking my autism?
Yeah, so it's what it sounds like. It's pulling on a mask to hide certain behaviors and traits. A lot of autistic people struggle with understanding social cues, or we fidget a lot for sensory input, and it's resisting all of those urges. It's masking, it's shutting down those urges to make sure that we fit in as quote unquote normal, and that we try to like play by the rules of society. And so it's very exhausting. It can be very long-term, very detrimental to someone's mental health to be constantly masking, because our body needs these outlets. And if we don't give them to them in some way, it does start to take a toll.
So have you felt like you mask less now, or is it just like a constant work in progress?
A little bit of both. I think as I have gotten more comfortable on TikTok, I've started masking less in my TikToks. But then in like real life, I think I'm masking less. Like I'm just, what's the words I'm looking for? I just let myself be myself at home, and God bless my husband for putting up with it. It's like the stimming and the dancing, and I work from home alone, so the conversations with the dogs and like just all of these little things, like I don't stop my brain at home anymore. I do still mask socially, and the reality is there are certain situations where for our honest to goodness safety, we have to mask. And I hate that, but that's the reality. So there are still times and places where I do mask a lot more heavily if I feel like that's the right choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because like you said, like autism is a spectrum, and I never knew how exhausting it was for an autistic individual to mask, but it is, I'm sure. Because like me, I'm an introvert. Like I am an introvert, even though I'm all over TikTok. I am such an introvert. Like literally, I just want to like curl up in my bed in my cocoon, and like I need to recharge my battery after any form of social situation. So like like that's my point of reference, and I'm like, yeah, like that's probably really friggin' exhausting.
Very similar. Yeah.
Yes.
It's very similar to that introvert thing. Or I think of like the chronic illness thing where like you have to suck it up and go to your cousin's wedding, and the whole time you're exhausted and in pain, but you like plaster the smile on your face and you dance with everybody a little bit and you do all this stuff, and then you go home and you spend the next couple of days like in extra pain and extra tired. That's masking too. It's just a kind of a different branch of it, but like you still have to pay the price somewhere along the way.
Right. Absolutely. So now dig into a little bit what this current business looks like for you. Like, what are you doing? Who are you working with? Are you working with business owners, or is it more of like a life coaching kind of situation? Dig into all of that.
Yeah, so the business structure in my brain is kind of two sides. I do see myself like strictly as a content creator, trying to put good information out for people who can't afford or aren't ready for paying for coaches. And then the other side is coaching. I mostly work with late diagnosed or people who are late realizing to the fact that they're neurodivergent. There's kind of this abrupt when it clicks all of a sudden, when TikTok keeps feeding you the videos and all of a sudden you go, oh shit, I'm different. It can really rock a person to their core. And so those are like my favorite people to work with, because it's life coaching, strategic life coaches. So we're looking at like how we show up in the world, what this means about our past, what this means about our future. How do we change and adapt what's not working to work better for us? And so it's a lot of one-on-one coaching, and just because it's so custom to each person's needs. And a lot of my clients, I actually have probably about half my clients aren't sure what they what they are. Like they don't know if it's autism or ADHD or both, but they know that their brain is different. And so we kind of sometimes spend time sorting that. I have one client who doesn't want to know what the answer is. They just know they're neurodivergent and that's where they're comfortable. So we work on that. And then I do have some clients who are fully formally diagnosed or in that process. And we process what that means. I had a client not too long ago who got her formal diagnosis of autism. And leading up to it, we were very excited that she was getting this far in the process. And the day she found out, it just knocked her feet out from under her, and all of a sudden triggered this big grief of like, who would I be if I had known this 40 years ago? And so like all of a sudden, like big shifting gears of like, we're taking some time to grieve and process and heal, and then we'll get back to the strategies that we're working on that help her show up better in the workplace.
Yeah. Now, this just popped into my head because I'm like, when you're doing life coaching and you're dealing with such deep issues and diagnoses like this, like, do you still keep up your, did you get a license in like therapy or anything, or?
So I did not. The licensing process to become a therapist is about a 3 to 5 year process. And
Okay.
I left that arena before I hit that point. So I did work as a therapist with supervision. And so like I worked by myself. I had clients of my own. I was doing therapy, but I always had a supervisor kind of checking my caseload. I never did get licensed, but I do absolutely still go back to that knowledge all the time. And again, I think that's another component that adds to me as a coach, is it's what you learn as a therapist is very different than what you learn as a coach, and being able to bring both of those together. I would like to caveat, just for legal reasons, I am not a therapist. I am not providing therapy, but understanding those modalities. And then I actually, because I am now so heavily working with specifically autistic and ADHD people, I'm actually going back and getting recertified in a couple of redoing some continuing education in both those arenas to really make sure that I'm on top of the most current research and the most current like practices.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's such a superpower for you, that like you can bring both of those like into the playing field. Because it is like really heavy topics sometimes for people, like grieving the person that they once were, going back to some childhood trauma, like So yeah, I love that you are like leaning on continuing ed and stuff like that. But
Oh,
you
yeah.
also have your own personal experiences to draw on. So it's not
Yeah.
like you're some kind of like random Joe.
Right, exactly. Yeah, this is also driven by 20 years of doing this shit in my own life and seeing there was a point 15 years ago that I didn't think I'd live to see my 30s, honestly. And now I'm 39 and I'm doing pretty freaking good. And I want to help other people get there. And I've done so much trial and error and learning. Like, if I can't prevent the pain for anybody else, but if I can help them move through it with more support and maybe move through it quicker than I did, then I'm killing it. Then I'm hugely successful.
Yes, yes. And I am so glad you're here.
Thank you.
So now when it comes to working on growth with neurodivergent folks, where do you see like the most difficulties, or where do you see them needing more support than say like the majority of like neurotypical people?
There's kind of two parts. One is this emotion of shame and self-judgment. We have to do a lot of letting go of the shame, a lot of self-acceptance, a lot of self-trust, because our entire lives we've felt like a misfit, and like all of a sudden we're realizing we're a misfit. And so there's a lot of that shame work that we do that's real deep, real emotional. On the more logistical side, there's a lot of, especially the autistic folks, they want to do it the quote unquote right way. And my favorite answer to give to anybody is that there is no right way, and they hate me for that. And so we have to also spend a lot of time like trial and error of what's going to work for you. Or like, I talk about journaling a lot. It's a thing I do. It's a thing I find really powerful, but I never ever just tell a client like, hey, I want you to start journaling, because a lot of them do not like it. And so it's like, cool, I like the concept of journaling. How do we make it work for you? And they're like, well, I guess I can get a notebook. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm not asking you to journal. I want to achieve this emotional outlet for you. What have you tried? What's worked? What hasn't worked? What can we try for you, and see if we can find something new for you? And so there's a lot of that customization of what's going to work for you. Did that work? Great. Did that not work? Cool. Next.
And that probably feels so good that someone's like, no, you don't have to get a notebook. Like, let's do what works for you. Because a lot of these people, probably for the majority of their lives, especially if they were late diagnosed, they probably didn't get a lot of accommodations because they didn't know that they needed to advocate for accommodations. They didn't know that accommodations were even available for them. And so just that like validation of like, no, let's do what works for you. Like, that's totally fine. That probably feels phenomenal.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
I love that. So let's shift gears a little bit into content.
Yeah.
So now, Casey, my friend, you have like been crushing it on TikTok.
Thank
Like
you.
absolutely crushing it, especially like in the last few months. I like have loved watching you grow. So like tell us what it was like when you first got on TikTok, and like what has your process been for creating content?
Yeah. So October of last year, I was in that shift of like what's next in life and realizing I wanted to go into this kind of mental health leaning area. And I decided I was going to put all the business shit aside and just show up on TikTok. I'm not going to book clients. I didn't even have a website. I didn't call myself a coach or anything. I'm just going to show up and make videos. And I just started cranking out videos, and it was all about getting comfortable on screen and testing processes. So I tried what a lot of the like social media gurus teach you of like batching and like pre-writing your scripts and outlining and like setting out a calendar to follow every day. And like, I could do it, but it was exhausting and my videos felt very stiff. And like friends who know me saw my content and they're like, it's fine, but it's not you. And so I worked with a gentleman by the name of Justin Schumann. He's a content coach as
Yes.
well.
Oh, I know Justin Schumann. I'm a huge like musical theater girly.
Okay. Yeah. And so I jumped into Justin's work and was like, okay, what can this guy show me? And we finally got through that barrier of having to do it, quote unquote, right. And I just started showing up, and my people who know me were like, yes, that's you. And once it felt like me, it was easy to do. And now I don't think twice about like grabbing my phone and making a TikTok. Like I might run downstairs to where I have better lighting, but there's no more like obsessing over like, what should I say and how should I say it? And like scripting it out. Like I rarely pre-write stuff anymore unless it's like very specific knowledge that I want to hit right. And so, yeah, it was just this like, I would say October through about March was a lot of just trial and error and create a ton of stuff. And frankly, my views weren't over like 200 per video. So who cares if it's crap? Like not that many people are seeing it. And then I don't know what the hell happened. I keep analyzing this video, trying to figure out the trick so I can recreate it. But I had a video pop off. It's just shy of 500,000 views right now. And it has just been all uphill, all just unicorns and rainbows since then. And so my numbers keep growing. And I realized like my system is a blend of when my autism is running my business, it's a lot of like calendaring and scheduling and planning content creation time. I have like my little like, here's what I'm doing for my newsletter worksheet, like my whole week is planned out. And then when the ADHD side of my brain is running my business, like we're just doing the shit that feels good and throwing it up there. and I've learned to just like let both of them like take their turns.
Yes. And I love that you said you just started like testing shit.
Yeah.
Because like that's what you need to do. And people hate hearing that because they want to hear like, okay, I'm going to tell you exactly what to do to go viral and be successful and land a bunch of clients from TikTok. Here you go.
Yeah.
But like, that's not how it works. You
No.
have to play and you have to test.
Yes. And it's an evolving process. Like once I got comfortable showing up on video, like when I was working with Justin, the first couple of calls were like, how do I just get over the nerves and how do I let me come out? How do I cuss? How do I use my hands when I talk? How do I just be big and goofy and who I am? And so once I got there, then we started tweaking it. Then we went back and like to this day, I suck at writing hooks. Like per the industry standard of what's a good hook, I am trash at hooks. And so I tweak that and I practice my hooks. And sometimes I'll write out hooks, and I'm starting to use Chat GPT to like brain dump some ideas for hooks. And like my other big goal right now is I don't do a lot of calls to action because I forget, because I'm like so focused on the content that I wanted to make that I forget to like remind people I'm a coach and you can like work with me. And so like that's my other big assignment right now is like remembering to put a CTA on everything that I do, even if it's just a drop a comment kind of CTA. It doesn't always have to be a sales pitch, right? But like focus on one stage at a time, like get comfortable on camera. That was the hardest part. Once I had that down, now it's this easy educational, almost analytical. I can look at old content. I can see what people responded to. I can look at how like I had a video and I did a certain CTA, and the next thing I know, my next 2 weeks were just booked. And it was like, okay, like, note to self, that worked. And so now that's the game I'm playing, is that next level of tinkering.
So now do you find that like your leads and your clients are coming from TikTok, or is it like a combination of things?
Right now it's 100% TikTok.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And I always I talk about TikTok as like an awareness platform, but I always say it is not lost on me that someone can go right from TikTok to working with you or buying your thing, because the culture on TikTok is almost unexplainable. It's like you are getting so close to the person so quickly.
Yeah.
That it's like, sure, like it makes sense because it feels like I've been hanging out with you. Like I feel comfortable to work with you.
Yep. Yeah. In my brain and my business strategy, TikTok is technically my outreach platform and Instagram's my nurture platform. But I find people don't want to move between one to the other.
Yeah.
And so why try to drag them? And so, like, if you really want the behind the scenes of my life and you want to see how freaking cute my dogs are, then you need to follow me on Instagram. Like,
Yes.
that's my stories are the day to day, how cute my dogs are. I'm also obsessed with birds. And so, like, all my bird camera stuff. But, like, it's funny because I will see in my TikTok and my notifications, somebody will watch a video and then, like, a half hour later, they will like 15 more videos. They'll just binge video after video after video after video, and then they'll pop up in my books. And it's like you said, it's this thing of like, I get to like see how this person behaves. I get to see their methodology. I get to see their like personality. Yes, I want to work with them.
Yes. And I just want to make it clear for people listening that like Casey put in work and a lot of content to make that happen.
Yeah.
I do this. I don't just post like once a month. Like it takes lots of content and testing and listening to what your audience likes and making more of that to eventually create the piece of content that are going to get people on to your books. But I love hearing that like all of your people are coming from TikTok. That's phenomenal.
And like the other one I want to throw out kind of on the same lines of that still screws with me mentally to this day is the videos that get a lot of engagement, a lot of likes and views and shares are not the videos that convert to clients. It's the video that gets like 1,000 views that converts to the client. So don't be disheartened. And like that chasing the viral video thing or like, oh, this only got 400 views. Like put 400 people in a room with you and tell me how little 400 people is. And so like, yeah, there's this every now and then I'm like, my videos haven't been doing well lately. And my friend is like, yeah, but how are your books looking? And I'm like, okay, fair point. Like,
yeah,
that you don't
100%.
have to be doing huge.
100%. And like, I feel like, you know how we said TikTok is an outreach or an awareness platform. Instagram is more for nurturing. I feel like there's types of content on TikTok that are more for awareness and outreach. And then content on TikTok that's more for nurturing.
Yep.
And the nurturing content typically will not get the thousands and thousands and thousands of views. However, that is the type of content a lot of the time that will get people to buy or hop onto an email list or go to a workshop. So, and again, yes, you're getting 400 eyeballs completely for free on your brand and your business. And that's incredible.
Yeah. Yep.
So the last thing I want to talk about is community, because I feel like you also have a very engaged community on TikTok, which isn't always easy.
Yeah.
So can you talk to us kind of about how you think your people were drawn into you and then maybe why they stay?
I think early on in my experimenting and just trying to get comfortable on TikTok, I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't selling. So all of my calls to action were like this. If you agree, send this to a friend that needs to see it. And I also ask for other people's ideas in the comments a lot. So I'll talk about accommodations and I'll say something, you know, like, hey, if I'm struggling to eat, this is a thing that helps me get through food sensitivity. What's worked for you? Tell me in the comments. And because I'm not the expert. Like I'm just another one of the people. And so I want this to be a community. I learned so much from my community and I love the ideas they share with me and the stories they share with me. And so I invite a lot of it into my comment section, which I think really is where that comes from and I also still, for the most part, it's getting harder as my numbers get bigger, but I still try to kind of, monitor my comment section. So there are things I say that every now and then are a little bit controversial, and I will not hesitate to delete and block a troll. I actually last week got hit with a bunch of trolls and had to private a couple of videos so we could situate the situation. But I want people in my comment section to feel safe because it's under my video. That means you're in my community. That means I get to set the rules.
100%. I always say, like, it's your corner of the internet.
Yes.
Bless and block as you see fit.
1000%. Exactly. Yes.
And I just want to like touch back on a sentence that you just said because it's so powerful. And I think that it's a way that everyone can kind of grow and nurture their community is I'm just another one of the people. Like you need to portray that. I'm just another one of the people because if you're like, well, I'm the leader and I'm the expert and I'm better and you're all under me and you have to listen to me. That is the most unapproachable thing in the world. Yeah. And like, sure, you might get like some saves here and there because like you're giving a tip, but it's not necessarily going to build you a community. And on social media, community is everything, especially if you are a creator, a brand, a business, like it's everything. So just be another one of the people.
Exactly. I have some unique and additional perspectives, but that doesn't make me any above or different in any other way. Like we all have a different perspective on things.
Yes. Okay, I know I said that was the last thing, but I have one more thing that we have to talk about. Okay. So last night, at least when we're recording this, when you're listening to this, it'll probably be old news, but we're going to riff on this for a second. Last night, Instagram's app Threads came out.
Yes.
And I fucking love it. I literally just recorded a TikTok about that. It literally feels to me like the day I got on MySpace behind my parents' back and just the absolute like dopamine and adrenaline running through my veins is like enough to fuel a whole city.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So like, I want to hear your thoughts about Threads.
I'm still figuring it out. So far, it like I got the notification like as I was crawling in bed, and I was like, "Oh crap! Don't open it! And of course, I had to open it. And
I had to.
I stayed up an extra few hours last night. But yeah, it's like right now, it's just sheer chaos because it's just new people are flooding in. Everybody's asking questions. Everybody's just like going feral because there are no rules. There's no standard. We're figuring out the algorithm. Like each social media platform has its own personality. Like that's no secret. And nobody knows what the personality of Threads is yet. And I think it will develop. But right now it's just feral. And I love it. Like I've spent more time on Threads today than I have TikTok, which that never happens. And it's just like, and I'm finding new people. Like I feel like the neurodivergent community is relatively small. And all of a sudden I'm seeing these names and some of these creators are pretty big. And I'm like, how have you never popped up in my Instagram or my TikTok feeds before? But they're popping up here. And I'm like, cool, I'm here for it. Like I personally, my approach right now is other than a few favorite people who I follow across all platforms, I'm trying to find a lot of new people and not just repeat who I have on other platforms.
Yes. I love that you said that because I am too. I'm finding new people, which I'm like shocked because I actually did select, you can select to like follow the people that you follow on Instagram. But then like as I'm scrolling through like that homepage or like the main feed, I'm like, oh my God, I've never seen you before. Like you're totally somebody that I could have in my community. Like it's wild. And I feel like everybody's like actual personality is coming out, not like the stifled version that we see on Instagram behind your Canva graphics. Like I feel like people's actual personalities are coming out and I'm like, yes, I'm going to eat this up. Like I fucking love this. Like just unfiltered. Because people are like, wow, we're all on the same playing field for the first time in years.
Yeah.
Like it's so incredibly refreshing. So
yeah,
if you're not on Threads yet, go find Casey and I on there. And be prepared to lose like a few hours of your day.
Yep, exactly.
Well, Casey, thank you so friggin' much for coming on. I absolutely loved our chat. And if people want more Casey Jourdan in their lives, where can they find you?
TikTok and Threads are the best places to start. I'll say TikTok's my go-to. It's where my most content is.
Yes.
And that's at Casey Jourdan. And then the other best option to kind of learn about me and see what's up is caseyjordan.com/hello. And there will be access to all sorts of fun things. You can learn more about me. You can get ready to work with me, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you everyone for hanging out in the Cozy Content Corner, and I will see you on the next one.